CBD oil. My initial thoughts when I heard that was, isn't that for people who smoke pot? I wondered, if I try it, am I going to get high? Is it legal? Will I get addicted? Not only did I have a lot of reservations about doing an episode on CBD oil, but I also went in knowing pretty much nothing about it. What made me change my mind and frankly open my mind to learn about it? It was hearing stories from friends and from so many of you who DM'd me or spoke to me in private saying things like, CBD oil changed my life and CBD oil was a game changer for my anxiety. Hearing that from you and my friends made me wonder. I wonder who else's life could be changed if they also could learn about CBD oil and with an open mind could then make the best decision for themselves. Your stories about how much it helped you inspired me to learn more and to say yes to having Nadya from ICARIA come on our podcast and share her knowledge about CBD oil and teach us what it's all about. In this episode, you're going to learn the answer to a lot of questions I had, and a lot of them are your questions too. Like, is it legal? How much do I take? How do I find a good source? Will I get high? Will I become dependent? And if I'm using it as a supplement, what can I expect and how do I do it? Before we start, there's a few things I want you to know. First of all, I'm not an affiliate. I don't have a CBD business or anything like that. And this episode is not sponsored and it's not an ad. You guys know that I do share things that I believe in, and I will always do that from my heart and do it with integrity. I do sometimes use affiliates to help sponsor the show, but this is not one of those episodes. In full transparency, which I do think is really important, Nadya gifted me with a bottle of ICARIA CBD oil as a thank you for having her on the show. And I can honestly say that I love her products. The CBD oil has been a wonderful extra tool in my toolbox. And like so many of you guys too who reached out to me, it's helped me with my sleep, my anxiety, and I feel really confident and comfortable using their products in a way I never expected when her first email landed in my inbox with the idea for this podcast. One of my missions for Goalden Girls podcast is for us to take conversations that normally happen with whispers or between just best friends, behind closed doors and in DMs. I want to literally take a microphone, like, hello, I'm in a microphone right now, and put it on the conversations that start with sentences that say, I never tell anyone this, or I don't usually talk about this, or don't tell anyone this. I want to peel back the curtain on those things that we are all wondering about, the things that we're all struggling with and we're secretly curious about, or whatever that is. And I want us to open it up for all of us to get our questions answered, for us to share the things that work or don't work without fear, and for us to know, for you and for me to know that we are not alone. That's what we're doing here, and that's what this episode is all about. I know you're curious about CBD oil, but you don't know where to start. And I know some of you guys use it and you're probably doing it in private and you don't feel open talking about that. I hope that this episode starts to change this and breaks down the barriers to us questioning our stereotypes and being open to asking personal and tough questions. I also hope it opens us up to sharing and learning about tools that can help us and others. Also, before I share this conversation with Nadya, my lawyer wants me to tell you and remind you that I'm not a doctor and neither is Nadya. We are two women sharing our experiences, hoping that it will help you in your life and your goal-getting journey. This isn't meant to treat any conditions. It's an honest conversation between us two women about everything from anxiety, stress, overachieving, stereotypes, bad breakups, and more. Everyone's bodies are different. We know that, and I encourage you to consult with your doctor or medical professional before you decide to try CBD. Also, we are recording this in beautiful British Columbia, Canada, where we're talking about it and it's legal here. But it's definitely worth giving a check to find out if it's legal where you live too. Caution too, I do swear once or twice in this episode, so if your child is a little parrot like mine and will repeat it, you may want to listen to this episode with headphones in. One last thing. Nadya and I both mentioned this, that we don't smoke marijuana. And I mentioned this in the episode, but I just want to call it out up front because this is important to say. If I'm asking you to listen to this episode with an open mind and open heart, I want you to know that we don't judge people that do smoke marijuana and find benefits from it. We also come with an open heart and an open mind. Maybe this is something even for me to do a future episode on to break down those stereotypes and get real knowledge because if I'm being honest, which that's what I'm here to do, I didn't even know the difference between hemp and marijuana and cannabis until this episode. If you don't know what the difference is either, stay tuned because you are going to learn. This episode is here for you to learn and to understand, for you to feel comfortable asking questions and to make the best decision for you. Goalden Girl, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. I learned so much about CBD oil, and you are about to as well. Welcome to the Goalden Girls podcast, where we believe you can have it all. I'm your host, Lisa Michaud, and I'm spilling tangible tips, goal-getting strategies, and real-life stories to inspire you to tackle your biggest dreams. You're a woman who knows you're made for more. Get ready to leave the excuses and self-doubt behind by being vulnerable, sharing your truth, and having honest conversations so you can succeed on your terms. Together, we'll set goals you'll actually achieve by staying motivated, having fun, and building a community of women empowering women. It's time to tap into your best self, get confident, and truly have it all. Goalden Girl, let's dive in. Hi there, and thank you so much for joining for this episode of the Goalden Girls podcast. My name is Lisa Michaud, and I'm so excited to have a very special guest here today, Nadya. And Nadya, I'm so excited to have you here and to chat with you. You are the founder of ICARIA CBD oil, and this is such a hot topic, so thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I know that we have very similar audiences, so I'm super excited to be talking to you and to spread the knowledge about CBD, because I feel like a lot of your audience will be able to relate to my story and how I started, and I hope that there's going to be a lot of learning today.
Oh my gosh, I think we are going to learn a lot. I put the question out there to you guys and asked you, what questions do you have about CBD? And I've pulled all those questions in, and Nadya has been so generous to take her time, and she's really all about education. So I know we have a ton of questions, so let's just dive right in.
Yeah, let's dive in because we have a lot of questions from you guys.
Okay, so let's start by talking about the stigma, because I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I got the request from Nadya about being on the podcast, and I really went back and forth, and I was like, oh, I don't know if isn't this for potheads or for like other people, or what kind of people do CBD? Like, I had this stigma and I wasn't sure about it, and I didn't know what that was going to mean for the podcast and if anyone would even really care about it. And of course, the universe intervened pretty quickly, and I actually had a couple friends introduce me to CBD oil and kind of start talking to me about it. And I even had another friend that said, "Hey, you got to learn about ICARIA," and I was like, oh my gosh, you're kidding. I literally have an email in my inbox that I'm like weighing and trying to figure out if it's the right thing. And so it was meant to be.
Meant to be. Universe aligned.
Totally. So I know, and I also know, by the way, that's my stigma, but I know a lot of other of you guys that have reached out to me and were interested in this episode. But we're having these conversations behind closed doors. We're not talking about it in a room full of women, and certainly not on podcasts yet. So we're here to change that. So tell me, that was my stigma, and I know you, Nadya, had a similar kind of journey. So can you walk us through where you were to now running a CBD oil company?
Yeah, it's crazy. I would never have thought I'd be here, to be honest. So I'm a holistic nutritionist, and I worked in holistic nutritionist for the past 7 years, and I'm all about health and putting into your body only what's best for it, and sleeping well and exercising and doing all of these things. And I never would have expected myself to be working in cannabis, to be honest with you, because as an immigrant from Russia, we didn't grow up with cannabis. Like, I feel like in Canada, cannabis is way more popular among teenagers than it was in my circles ever. So if you don't try cannabis as a teenager, I feel like as an adult, it's a very weird thing to try. So I think I've tried it once when I was like 18, and I've never had it again. And not because I was like, it was something terrible. It's just never been in my circle, never had a lot of stigma around it. Like, if you smoke weed, you don't go anywhere in life, and all these terrible things. And my mom raised me as like, you do drugs, you will die kind of thing. So just a lot of just limiting beliefs and stigmas around all of it. So when my friends were, and I have quite a few good friends that use cannabis in very medicinal ways to help them, with a lot of different issues. And I see that they're using it in a very healthy way. And when I moved to Vancouver 4 years ago, I saw that for the first time, like how people actually use it in a medical way. And I'm still like, well, that's still not for me. Like, I don't really need it. So my friends would always try to convince me to take it, to take CBD. And I have no idea what CBD was. And then after a while, I I was going through a breakup, like a really, really tough, I don't know, I feel like everybody has been through a tough breakup. Like everybody can relate to that when you're just like a mess and life is just a mess. And when I was going through that breakup, a couple of my friends were convincing me to try CBD oil, and I was like, no, not there yet, kind of thing. And then one of my friends, he's an ultra marathon runner, and he convinced me, because I was like, well, if you can take it, I can take it. And he convinced me to take, and I took one drop. And it was a big deal, and I didn't feel anything, obviously, because it's one drop. Like, take a one drop of anything, you're not going to feel it. So I took one drop, and I was like, okay, well, I guess, like, that's when I was like, okay, so one drop, like, I didn't, nothing happened, so I was fine.
You didn't die.
I didn't die. So it was exactly. So I didn't become a drug addict to die or any of that. So, and then my other friend literally one day took me by my hand. She's like, we're going to a dispensary to buy you some CBD oil. The funny thing, we couldn't actually find any CBD oil. I felt extremely uncomfortable going to 4 different dispensaries with her. And we found a patch. So we bought a patch, and I tried a third of that patch. And by the way, it wasn't dosed or anything like that, going back to. And so I still don't know how much I took. And that day when I tried it, it was the most relaxing, productive, focused, finally like feeling normal day after that breakup, that I was shocked, and I just knew I had to research it and get more into it. And then I started researching it, and as a nutritionist, that's my field. How does a supplement, how does a substance that we put into our body affect our body, right? So whether it's I'm researching, I don't know, different amino acids, or it is a new moringa powder, or it is, a vitamin A, whatever it is, that is basically what we study, right, in nutrition. So it was definitely in my field of expertise. And when I started researching it, I was just shocked. I'm like, there's basically no side effects, and it works for so many different issues, and how did I ever have a stigma around it? And then when I told my other friends that I'm taking CBD oil, all my friends reacted to me that you are a drug addict, and you were as a joke, sort of like joke not joke, joking not joke. So that's when I think I really realized, like, it took me a couple of months to really be like, I think I need to start working with this, just because I got so much benefit from it. Like, it was just like life changing for me, to be honest with you. And that's on one hand side, and then on the other hand side, I saw the feedback that I was getting from my community of friends, that they were thinking that it's so bad that I was taking it. And so I felt like, and it's funny, as soon as I launched the product, everybody was totally fine taking it from me after, and I was like, oh, okay, so I just got to launch a product, and you were fine with it now. So I got all my friends on it.
That's amazing. So not only did you not die, but then you also became a drug dealer, hey?
Totally. That's the joke. Definitely.
Oh, Mom must be so proud. I'm totally kidding. I know your mom is actually very proud.
At first she wasn't at first. Well, when I told her I was trying CBD, like she was not okay with that. And but now she's taking it too, and she loves it, and it really helps with her menopause and sleep and anxiety. Yeah.
And I was at this was not planned, but she was at an event a couple weeks ago with you, and so your mom is now a drug dealer too. So I mean, and she hasn't died. So that's so good.
Technically, yeah, we're still all alive, healthier than ever.
I love that, and thank you so much for sharing that, Nadya, because I think so many people can relate to that, like being grown up and not doing drugs. And I'm from BC, and I'm probably one of the rare people who doesn't smoke pot. I'm like the only one. There's 2 of us. 1%. Yeah. So thanks for listening, the other person. But I do think that there's this like you said, you're either gonna die, or you're gonna become addicted, or you're gonna go nowhere in life. And so that's why these conversations, I know the conversations about CBD, they're happening in private conversations. They're happening between friends. They're happening in little pockets. But I know one of your missions is to really share it with more women.
Totally. And it's funny because I find women that do, even I have my friends that do take cannabis in all different forms regularly, and they still have stigma about it. But almost like it's almost like a self stigma, as you are. I'm doing it, but I'm not sharing it with anybody, because they know of the stigma, and they're obviously obviously like a very functional business women that are very successful and healthy and all those things. And it's sad that we still have that.
Oh, I mean, I can relate because, and if you're listening, maybe you're one of those people that's been messaging me over in Instagram the last few days as we've been talking about this on my Instagram. And so many people are like, oh, I try it, but I haven't really told anyone about it. Or, I try it, but I'm really not sure where to, I don't want to talk to anybody about it. Or it's so interesting how many of you guys, and myself too, like I said, I was almost didn't want to do this podcast. I was nervous about it. So there is definitely a stigma. And I hopefully through having this conversation with you, Nadya, from learning from an educational perspective, which I love that you bring, and you bring the nutrition side. I want us to be able to have these conversations about things that help us, because if it helps us, then we need to know more. We need to talk about it, right?
Totally. And it's unfortunately, it's very, I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that everything in our world is somehow connected to money and politics. So I feel like that's exactly what happened for cannabis, and there has been a lot of the prohibition that happened with a lot of quote unquote drugs was something to do with money and politics, as always does. So it's unfortunate because it is such a medicinal plant. There's so many amazing qualities of it that we weren't able to study because we weren't allowed to study it. And we're still at the beginning of it. We're still at the beginning of the journey of exploring all the health benefits of cannabis. And I think you had a question about how it works, and if I explain how it works, then I'll be able to talk more about it.
Yeah, that was actually, I know a couple of you guys asked this, what, and I had this question right before after I got your email. I was like, what does it actually do for people? What? I have this stigma. I know I shouldn't be taking it. I know I might become a drug dealer and die. But what does it actually do? If I'm not using it, if I'm using it as a supplement, like you said, not necessarily medicinal purposes, what can we expect?
Yeah. So I'll just quickly explain a little chemistry behind it. So every plant, every food, it has a bunch of different phytochemicals, means plant chemicals. So just the natural compounds that occur, right? Let's imagine we're eating an apple, right? There's going to be fiber in apple. There's going to be vitamin C in our apple. There's going to be all this different flavonoids. So those are just different chemical compounds, correct? That we call different names. So
already over my head, but yes, I'm following. Yes, okay.
So in cannabis, there's just some more unique chemical compounds. They're called cannabinoids. So we actually have them in our body, and they're also called cannabinoids. They're just produced by our body. The reason why it's not very well known is, as I said, we weren't able to study them, and we weren't able to really share that knowledge for so many years. But there's a couple of research institutes in Israel that have made a bunch of research on it. So we have an endocannabinoid system. Endocannabinoid system means just we have our cells in a body that produce those cannabinoids, and then we have receptors everywhere in our nervous system that receive signals from those cannabinoids. So that's why it has such a vast effect on our body. First of all, it's completely natural to our body, so our body knows exactly what to do with it. It's kind of like when we're taking, let's say, vitamin C, right? It's completely natural. Our body knows exactly what to do with it. So it's very easy to utilize. And that's first. And second, because we have the receptors for those cannabinoids in our brain, in our nervous system, that's why it affects basically everything in our body, because everywhere we have our nervous system, right? So because it has such a vast effect, that's why when we're talking, we're like, it's good for sleep, and then it's good for pain, and then it's good for this. It's because it's in our brain, right? It's it's connected to a lot of things. The main goal of that endocannabinoid system is to bring and to keep our body in balance. We're constantly trying to stay in balance within our system. Our temperature is constantly trying to be stable. Our pH level is trying to be stable. Hormones trying to be stable. Everything needs to be in this perfect balance. And it's actually really difficult for our body to do that, because think about how many external things that are constantly coming in our body, like whatever air we're breathing in, or whatever we're eating, or exercise, or sleep, or whatever. It's constantly affecting us. So our body's working really hard at keeping us balanced. So that's what endocannabinoid system does as well. It keeps us at balance. So that's why it has such a wide range of effects. And I'll talk about the effects in a second. So there's different cannabinoids. There's over 100 different cannabinoids in cannabis that we know of. We don't even know how many we have in our body. We're like, again, trying to play a little bit of a catch-up game. But we do know that the most two popular ones the most two prevalent ones in cannabis are called CBD. That's the one we're talking about, and THC. THC, out of over 100 cannabinoids, is the only psychoactive one. So that's one compound. It's one chemical that's psychoactive. The rest of them aren't psychoactive. So
what does that mean for those? Yeah.
So psychoactive means just like it's gonna get you high. So THC is the only thing that will get you high in cannabis.
And that is like what most people are smoking. I'm super naive here. I don't know.
No, this is amazing questions. So when you smoke, you will get all of the cannabinoids, all of 100 ones, or like whatever the profile of that specific because it's kind of like, imagine you eating an apple or you eating an orange. There's going to be similar vitamins in them. There's going to be vitamin A, vitamin C, and whatever. But there's going to be different ones as well. So there's different strains of cannabis, so they're going to have different percentages of them, and all that stuff. So that's why right now, like the most popular ones in cannabis world are the ones that are high in THC, because people are like, oh my god, I can get higher from less smoking or whatever.
Okay. So interesting.
Yeah. So what CBD is just one chemical compound. So they basically extract it. So imagine again extracting vitamin C from an orange or from an apple. You just extract one chemical compound, and that's all it is. So CBD is actually a powder. It's a powder, yeah. And then because it's fat soluble, that's why it's diluted in some sort of carrier oil. So in ICARIA, it's either hemp oil or coconut oil. So CBD itself is pretty much like colorless, tasteless powder. Yeah.
Okay. So it can't get me high, is that right?
It cannot get you high. There's absolutely no way of getting high from CBD. The only compound that can get you high is THC, and so basically that's why we test our CBD twice to make sure that there's 0.00% THC in them.
Wow, amazing. This is so interesting because I've literally walked into a pot shop once as like, oh, this looks interesting. What's in here? And I walked in, I was like, I don't know what any of these different signs mean.
It makes you uncomfortable.
Had no idea. Yeah, I felt so uncomfortable. And so...
I still do.
Yeah. So that's really fascinating because I didn't understand. I was like, what are all the different types? I'm not sure. And I was like, okay, I've had my laugh. I'm going to leave. So thank you so much for sharing that. Super interesting to learn about the different strains. And then now I actually, for the first time ever, understand what it is. So thank you for explaining that so
good.
clearly.
Okay. I'm no specialist in cannabis. I work with only one ingredient. It's kind of like the way, and I get criticism sometimes for it because I don't work in a holistic way with a plant. Because it's kind of like same ideas. Let's go back to my apple example. There's vitamin C in an apple, so I just work with vitamin C, and I only talk about vitamin C, and I don't talk about anything else. And people are like, well, there are other benefits of the apple, and I'm like, I know there are other benefits of the apple, but I don't want to it's very complicated and it's very complex, and because I don't work with THC, I just don't want to work with the whole plant. And there is kind of like my holistic self says that there is like a little bit of a controversy there. However, I just don't want to work with THC because there are side effects of it.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's just interesting because each one of us has to figure out what feels right for us, right?
Totally.
And that's one of the things I know my girlfriend who spoke to me about your brand and told me about you too. She's someone who's also a nutritionist, and she was like, I love that Nadya has done her research and has really done the work. And so I know that gave her confidence, which of course gives me confidence, right? I'm like, oh yeah, so she must really know her stuff. And I mean, if we're coming to talking about CBD oil, we want the expert in CBD oil. So that feels, I think that's really great that you have to know where your specialty is and where your expertise is.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I really do try to focus on CBD and like what CBD does. Because honestly, on its own, it's just so amazing.
Okay, so tell us about some of these benefits, because you've kind of dropped a few of them. Like what are those benefits?
I'll go with the main one. So the main one that my ladies are taking it for are anxiety and stress. Just because I never realized how stressed and anxious our world was until I started working with CBD. Because I always feel like I am this unique, stressed out person that I am more anxious than anybody else. I am more stressed out than anybody else. And I just thought that it's my only problem. And here I am realizing that literally I haven't met other than my ex-boyfriend. But other than that, I don't think I've ever met anybody who wasn't stressed out.
Oh, that's the truth. Okay. I love it.
He was a really relaxed person. Good for him. No, a lot of admiration there. I'm like, how can I be more like you? And so I honestly think that our world is just extremely stressed out, extremely anxious. So and the way we're living our life, it's not really helping. However, so that's number one. Second one from that is sleep. If we're stressed throughout the day, we're not going to sleep well at night. That's just the way our hormones work. So sleep is a big one. And third one is pain. Pain is a huge one. So people take it for arthritis, fibromyalgia, migraines, backache, whatever that is. So that is that is a really popular one. And hormonal balance, whatever that means too. So hormones are very intricate, and there is a connection between endocrine system and endocannabinoid system. So our hormones and our endocannabinoids. It's just balancing ourselves out. Like how many women experiencing PMS, how many women experiencing menopause. All of those are just symptoms of imbalances in our hormones. We're not supposed to be suffering once a month. We're supposed to be, going with ease about our day, right? So it's just the symptoms of like our hormones out of whack, and we got to do something about it. So people use CBD for that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool. That's amazing. That, to be super honest, anxiety is something I'd never faced until just even in the last few months. And this morning was a really tough morning for me. And I think I had what is probably almost an anxiety attack. So it's really interesting because it's something that I didn't know much about, and I don't have a lot of lens into. So it's really interesting that you're coming into my life with CBD at the same time as struggling with anxiety. And as I've been having conversations even just today with some people, I'm learning how common it is and how many people are struggling with anxiety. And so I think it's such a gift that there is something like CBD to help people, because man, it's real, and we live in such a stressed out world. And so thank you for coming in and
thank
creating
you
this.
for sharing, because I feel like just every woman, every time she says, I do also have an anxiety sometimes, or like I had it this morning or whatever, it just creates a safe space for other women to be like, me too. Like, because I honestly I never even thought that is something I need to think about and get rid of. I thought that's, I was watching Hassan Minaj, if anybody's into him. He's a comedian. He was like, I thought it gives me an edge in life. I thought I'm just more motivated because of my anxiety.
Oh my gosh.
People would ask me, they're like, how do you stay motivated as an entrepreneur? And I'm like, I just wake up anxious. It really helps.
Oh my gosh.
Now I'm like, that is so unproductive.
Totally. There's, I think, a point where you're being motivated, and this is of course, this Goalden Girls podcast, right? So we talk about goals, and there's always a line between the being motivated and wanting to reach your potential and the place where it doesn't serve you. And let me tell you, like this morning and in the last couple of, there's been days when I can't focus, when I can't get out of my head, when I'm worrying about all these things, and to the point where I can't get anything done, or I don't want to get out of bed, or I'm crumbled on the floor crying. Like, that is not productive, and that is not what life is about.
Totally not.
So.
And it's interesting because we get so much more done out of an inspired, creative place than we do out of a stressed and anxious place. But somehow there's always this like thought, if I just am more stressed, I get more done. It's so never true.
So true.
You said it in your podcast in one of the episodes. You said it. You can't outwork and overwhelm.
Yes, you can't work yourself out of overwhelm.
Yeah.
Or was it you can't work yourself to worthiness?
That too. No, it was something about overwhelmed because I feel overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah.
And that was
You
like,
can't
that just so
outwork yourself,
out of overwhelmed. Yeah. Or worthiness or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
and it's such a normal thing to do in our society to constantly be like, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overworked, blah, blah. And it's almost like half glorified, which I mean, I'm guilty of. Don't get me wrong, but it's realizing that is not the place I want to be in my day, and that's why CBD has been so helpful for me personally. Is because if I just am, another thing I forgot to mention, it really helps with our cognitive function. CBD actually improves our cognitive ability. It improves our focus and it improves our ability to like get things done. How many times I've heard from I teach nutrition at IHN, Institute of Holistic Nutrition, and a bunch of my students always would be like, oh my god, I studied for exams with CBD and it was so productive, or like, oh, this was the first book I've read in years because I was taking CBD, or whatever that is. If I'm having a stressful day and I take CBD, I can be so focused. It's like, it can be like painfully focused sometimes, which I'm like, I can never stay focused usually in everyday life. So definitely helps with that. So just like being more in tune with your day, more in tune with your body, more in tune with your like, oh, I need to be more less stressed and calmer. It just helps you with that, like a body awareness, almost a world awareness.
Cool.
Did you notice that?
Yes, I have, and I'm very new to it, and I'm excited because I've got some questions that myself, and I know some of you guys have too, that to help figure out how to actually use it.
Totally.
I want to quickly say something that I should have mentioned at the beginning. Just that I know, Nadya, you too, like, we have no judgment, by the way, about anybody that does use, I guess, or THC,
yeah,
or
THC, yeah, like, cannabis, yeah,
pot, like,
yeah, for sure.
No judgment here. We want to just be really clear about that. That it's
absolutely.
We both are aligned on this. That we like. I don't judge people for it. It's just a different decision than I've chosen to make. And
I drink alcohol. I'm really not sure alcohol is better than cannabis.
No, I drink all the wine for sure.
Totally. So
yeah,
I'm pretty sure I'm making worse decisions in life. And yeah. Cannabis can be very healing. It's one of those things. It's just if we're having any abusive behaviors, whether it's alcohol, overwork, that's an abusive behavior.
100%.
Whatever that is, it's just something to look into.
Yes.
But obviously, yeah. I come from a family. Talk about like. Just mention quickly about addiction, things like that. I'm Russian. I come from a family of addicts, obviously. There are stereotypes for a reason. So I know what addictions look like, and I know the worst sides of them. So if a person does struggle from addiction to anything, there's absolutely we pulled a card ruthless compassion this right before this podcast, so only compassion towards that. However, if you're using it in medical purposes and you feel like it's helping you deal with life in any sort of way, like go for it. There are definite benefits of cannabis that can be found.
Yeah, and wine.
And wine. You know what? Sometimes I'm like, this cannot be bad for me.
Yeah, I know, right?
Sometimes I'm like, this is awful, but yeah, so it depends on a day.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks. And we just want to let people know that it's definitely a personal choice. And I just can only speak to my experience, which is growing up in a place where I didn't smoke it. And also my work environment, I was in Fort McMurray, and I know some of you guys listening may be too, in a work environment where there's drug testing that happens, and drug testing dogs on site, or you work in a safety sensitive position where drugs aren't a potential. So that was where I want to, and I know sometimes that stigma still exists. So I want to speak to the stigma from a place of awareness and breaking that open, as opposed to reinforcing that stigma of potheads or stoners or you're going to have drugs and die, or you're a drug dealer, any of those things. I want to speak on behalf of them, as opposed to like reinforcing them, if that makes sense. So I did want to say that. Okay, so here's a question about actually using it. So there was a lot of questions that came in around, I've got CBD oil, but like you said, you're like, you're not the only one I've heard that's done this, that was like so nervous to take it that you only took one drop. And I've heard other people say that it's very complicated to figure out how much to use.
Honestly, whatever. So dosage is gonna be whatever works for you. It's kind of like, I don't know, let's compare it to food. How much food are you supposed to eat? You're supposed to eat until you're full, right? So it's as simple as that. So with CBD, it's the same thing. You're supposed to take until it works. Whatever dosage works for you. If you want to start with 1 drop and see that it's completely didn't do anything for you, do it. Then take 2. Then take 3, then take 4, like go for it. However, I've also heard like people reach out to me and they're like, I've taken 2 drops and it doesn't work for me. And I'm like, you've taken 2 drops, come on, like 2 drops will not work for you. Like there is a very, very small percentage of population that, not a very small, I actually know some people that 3 drops work for them, but it's small percentage. So there is people that, take 10 drops and it really works for them. There are people that take 50 drops and that works for them. So it really depends on your body. It really depends what you're taking it for. Some days I honestly need a couple of drops and I feel like it makes all the difference. Sometimes I can take a whole dropper and it won't make that much of a difference. Like it just depends on my day, depends on my body, depends where I'm probably in my cycle. It depends on just so many things that whatever works for you, like figure out your dosage. So what I recommend, take 5 drops. Wait for 10-15 minutes, whatever you're taking. Let's say you're taking it for anxiety, or anxiety is a little harder, not a little harder. Anxiety, what usually people do, let's say they take 5 drops and then they're 15 minutes later, they're like, well, I'm feeling, like, how are you feeling? They're like, I feel calm. And I'm like, oh, good, it worked. They're like, are you sure it worked though? Like, maybe I'm just feeling calmer. I'm like, maybe you're just feeling calmer. That's true. So a lot of times you will feel calmer, but like until that happens, let's say 3 or 4 times, it's really hard to believe that it's something else helping, because you feel so normal. Like you don't feel anything else other than, like, caffeine gives you more of a feeling than CBD does. It's not going to give you any sort of feeling. It's just going to take away the feeling of stress and anxiety. It's going to take away the feeling of pain. It's going to take away like restlessness at night. It just takes away feelings. It doesn't give you anything. So don't expect any fireworks. Don't expect any feelings. If you're feeling good, that's all you need to feel. Like you just need to feel normal.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, and then if it doesn't work 15 minutes later, take another 5 drops. Doesn't work 15 minutes later, take another 5 drops. I usually send a dosage journal with my bottles, and it helps you figure it out. Just record it. But I honestly feel like if you usually people like figure it out on their own. It's quite easy. Like what's you?
So I've noticed too, and even on your website, there's a couple different, I don't even know what the word is, like different strengths.
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
So how do you, if like for somebody first time using it, how do you pick one the right strength?
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter, like, to be honest. So the way I like to, they're all very different strengths. So for example, we have 3 different strengths in the same size of a bottle. It's 750 milligrams, 1500 milligrams, and 3000 milligrams. So it would be like our normal, then half, and then double, right? Or like, so it's whatever. If the only difference you need to know is that how much have you been taking, and then how do you need to double it or half it or whatever. Like if a person, let's say, because our strongest one just came out, it's a new product, right? So if a person has been taking, let's say, like 20 drops of our regular strength, and they're buying a new bottle, they just need to have their dosage. So they're taking now 10 drops only. The benefit of that is that some people take it, let's say, for arthritis. So they take it every day twice. And if you're taking every day twice 20 drops, you go through the bottle much quicker, versus if you're taking 10 drops, it's easier to take. The bottle lasts longer and it's cheaper, because the more concentrated the bottle is, the more you save prices wise, like, because it's kind of like the economy of scale.
Yeah.
Versus if a person is taking like 5 drops once a week for that stressful day that they have, then they can easily go for the lightest version and not worry about it, because the bottle will last them forever anyways. So it just really depends what you're taking it for and what your own preference is. I have so ICARIA in general has a quite concentrated like baseline. So our regular products are quite concentrated to compare to other brands. That's why a lot of times people say something like, oh, I tried other brands and they didn't work and the ICARIA worked. Honestly, a lot of times it's because they, a lot of times, like, they tell me the names of the brands and I'm like, oh, that's a good brand, that's a reputable brand. However, the brand is just has like way lower concentration, so you just need to take like a full dropper, versus ICARIA you just need to take like 10 drops. So, and a lot of people don't want to take a full dropper. They just want to take a couple of drops, just psychologically.
So, you, obviously, the first thing, which I love that you're saying this, is you have to know yourself, and it's going to change a little bit. It's going to depend. But it sounds like if you're using high amounts, it's better to use less drops of a higher dose.
I just find it's easier. But it's up to a person.
But yeah, it's personal, and it can, it's okay to use a lower dose too. You just might use more of it.
Totally. Yeah, it works the exact same.
Okay, cool. So interesting. Okay, here's a question that I'm curious about. Am I going to become dependent on it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's no dependency. There's nothing, because we can get dependent psychologically on something and then physiologically. So when we're physiologically dependent, let's say I'll go with like a hard drug, right? Like well, what are the, I don't know.
Heroin?
Heroin. Let's do heroin. So like as soon as you try once, your body basically craves it again, right? Or like even smoking. Let's go smoking. Cigarettes, right? Nicotine. Like people actually feel worse. Oh, caffeine. When you become dependent, if you stop taking it, you feel worse, right? So it absolutely does not happen with CBD. There's no physiological dependency on it. With psychological dependency of the fact of like, I'm stressed out, I need to have a smoke, right? There is psychological dependency on coffee, for example. I have a psychological dependency on coffee because my mornings like just become better if I drink a coffee, whether it's working or not at the moment. With CBD, it's interesting because I find, and I've heard it from many people with addiction history and all of that things, it's almost like you have to force yourself to take it, because it's almost like a yoga class that you have to do, versus minus all the effort of doing anything. But it's almost like, this is good for me and I have to take it and I'll feel better after. But when you're in that stress state, you almost want to be like, no, nothing is working, nothing is helping, nothing is going to work for me. You know, like that's why like meditation when you're stressed and anxious is not a lot of times working, because you're not doing it. Like,
yes, preach. Yes, in the last week when I've been stressed, I've been like, I should meditate, and then I get into meditation, I'm like, I have so much to do, this isn't working, and I suck at meditating, I'll just spiral. Yes, so
totally. So I feel like it's almost the opposite. You almost have to like force yourself to take it, and remember to take it. There is absolutely, so no physiological or psychological dependency at all.
Okay, so great. I love that you distinguished between those two things too. That's really fascinating. Thank you. Okay, so here's a biggie that I genuinely was still confused about. So, is this legal in Canada? Like, is it legal? When I was in my DMs, there was a lot of confusion around it. Like, how do we actually buy it? I've heard some of you guys were mentioning some sketchy sources and like being nervous to go buy the CBD oil. Like, do we need a prescription? Tell us about that whole bucket.
Yeah, so it's easy and it's not easy. So on one hand side, cannabis products and cannabis overall is legal in Canada. There's
Canada. So
Canada.
I know we've got some US people and international people listening. So
yeah, so in US CBD is way more prevalent than in Canada. In US, CBD is sold very often in the malls, and because a lot of times it's not considered to be a cannabis product. So in US is actually like a little bit Hong Kong, Japan, I want to say Korea, places where basically there's like a death sentence for cannabis, they have legalized CBD fully. It's bizarre. And then here we are talking about CBD as if it's like some sort of terrible drug. Europe, a lot of places it's legal. That being said, do not cross any border with any of cannabis products. Do not take accidentally with you in a car when you go into Seattle, you can get in trouble for that. Even though it's legal in Canada and US, crossing the border can cause a lot of issues.
Right.
And crossing into Canada as well. If you go to US and you buy this cool new CBD product, do not come back into Canada with it. That is absolutely illegal.
Cool. Okay, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
That's great. Super helpful.
Yes, because I love taking it on the plane, for the plane, because on the plane I get restless, and when I take a ton of CBD, I just relax and loving my plane, my flight. So and then on the way back I struggle a lot. So usually from wherever I'm traveling. So I know that a lot of people want to take it with them, but do not. Under any circumstance, don't go into Europe, don't go into any places. That being said, within Canada, it's totally cannabis products are totally legal. So which doesn't mean that anybody and everybody can be obviously selling it. And there is the only fully legal white market is whatever government sells. So any government dispensary, which is there's only a few.
In all of Canada, is only a few?
There's only a few in BC, only a few in each province. Each
Wow.
province will be different. We have probably the most out of Canada, maybe Ontario. We have more than a lot of other places, but we still have very little. A lot of them are still gray market. Statistically speaking, 80% of cannabis market is still gray, and 20% is legal. Most likely, any cannabis you've used most likely has been in a gray market, unless you went out of your way to find a legal dispensary and go there. And then online, if you see anything other than Canadian government website, that will all be gray market.
So can you buy CBD oil on the Canadian government website?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there is there too. Okay.
There is, yeah. And if you feel anxious or nervous about buying from a gray market, I recommend that. They unfortunately, it's hard to, because sometimes people ask me to send them links to government websites, which I do, because I want people to just try CBD, honestly. That is my genuine desire. So I try to find it, and it's actually quite complex. The way, you know how government websites are, it's just hard to find things.
Yeah,
so,
fascinating.
but if you spend some time researching, and going through it, I'm sure you'll find a good source. Yeah, and there's no marketing, there's no education, so it's hard. It takes time. But you can also go into a legal dispensary, and talk to people there, and ask them to give you the right. But the problem is that in legal dispensaries, they're also not allowed to explain you anything, because there's it's, oh my god, it's so complex.
Wow, isn't this is crazy. And I just want to say thank you so much for being genuine and for being so open about this. I really do feel, and I'm sure you guys listening too can feel, how passionate Nadya is and how she just wants to educate. And so thank you for sharing that, because it's so easy for you to just be yeah, just buy my stuff. And you, I believe, have such obviously buy her stuff. It's amazing. But
yeah, but
you
it's whatever you
genuine
feel,
heart
whatever
here.
you feel come more comfortable with, honestly. Just because that's why because this market is bizarre and weird. And honestly, I was telling Lisa right before our podcast interview, I'm honestly, when I see that the government is doing a good enough job to provide my customers with proper CBD, with a proper pricing, with a proper distribution model, that's when I'm ready to not be in this business anymore. Because I have my customer base, and they use the product and they change their lives. And then even if I for some reason pull out of the market, I feel like I left my friends alone, because it's hard to find that product otherwise. It really is. And so what I do usually, I do two things, because I had that question at first. I was how am I going to prove that what I'm doing is honest, right? So so there's two things. So first of all, I do lab tests. So we do lab tests when we create the product in the lab, and then we do third-party lab tests, which is the local Vancouver one. And then so I have it all on the website, and then that's first. And second, I try to collect as many reviews as possible, just because I believe in the power of review. I believe in the power of this, I love this product and I am ready to vouch for it. So I have quite a bit of people that kind of vouch for my product, and I think that's kind of the best thing I can, provide.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's all like we want to know what our friends are doing. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because it's happening in DMs on Instagram. It's happening in behind closed doors. But I think we do need to talk about it more. So I'm so grateful for everything you're sharing. Okay.
For having me and being open-minded to have me. I know this was a big step for you too, because I know it's not easy and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for you, I'm sure, to have me here. So
no, it's not. You're
not
wonderful.
Like personally me, just like me as a business owner. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having me and sharing this, because it's an important conversation.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I really wanted to think. I always try and think about you guys that are listening and what do you need to hear. And I think it kind of what you were even speaking to about anxiety and about like all these things that we don't know that we're the only ones suffering. We think that it's normal, or we think that we're not normal. We're the only ones. Right?
Yeah.
And so we don't actually learn about how we can make our lives better. And so I think that's part of my mission, and that's a big part of this podcast, is being able to talk about things that are going to help your life that you may not be able to hear anywhere else. The truths that we talk about behind closed doors and don't actually give it a microphone. So here we are, quite literally giving it a microphone. And so thank you for bringing this to everybody.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you obviously you have you're on a mission. You're creating this amazing community, and you're talking about I love how inspiring you are, right? And with the idea of goal setting and achieving what we set to achieve, and I'm a big believer in that. And I found myself also at some point I'm like I think we have very similar personalities, and I have a very much like, I won this, I'm gonna get it, right? So, and I find myself, I'm not enjoying certain things because I'm too stressed and I'm too anxious. And what's the point of getting any of this? What's the point of like, I was moving this weekend, and I'm like, at some point, like on Saturday morning, I realized I'm stressed, and I'm like, what's the point of moving into an apartment that I absolutely love and be stressed about it? Like, I'm supposed to be the most grateful, happy person, because it literally is an apartment from my dream board. Like, it literally came out of my dream board.
Wow.
And I am, instead of being like, woohoo, I'm loving this, I'm stressed. Like, what is happening?
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, and I know that you're not the only one. I felt that too. And actually, oh my gosh, so this is really funny. So before we hopped on this to record, we each pulled one of Danielle Laporte's truth bombs, and look at what mine says. What do you want that you already have? And there we go. At first I pulled it and I was like, I don't really get where that's going to fit in. But there you go. It fits it right in there, because so often you're right. We're too stressed or too anxious or too somewhere else to not even be enjoying the present moment. So yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about that for another several episodes,
totally.
because I totally can relate to that. And that's why one of the big things I always speak to women about is knowing how you want to feel, because if you don't feel good, nothing else matters. No titles, no dream apartment, no marriage or babies or money or any of that shit matters. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I just did. I have to put a warning in the beginning there, although I'm pretty sure this is not an episode you're listening to with your kids. So, but none of that matters if you don't feel good. So to bring it full circle, that's where this fits in so perfectly, your products and CBD oil in this conversation. Because if we don't feel good as women, what the heck is the point? We don't show up for ourselves. We don't show up for our goals. We don't show up for our family. We don't show up for our friends. We don't show up for our customers who become our family. We don't show up for anybody. There's no freaking point. So you've got to take care of you. You've got to start with you. Everything starts with you.
Totally. And can I just make a note of how inspiring that was? There was a moment right before we started the podcast, and your husband brought your daughter, and you took that moment of love and connection, and it was just this pause in a moment of time when you kissed her and you tell her how much you loved her, and it just felt like everything just stopped. And I feel like it's so important, and I felt so inspired by you in that moment of time as a mother, because I want to have kids one day, and I just hope that I'm able to manage business and children and all of that, and all of the stressors of life, and just like you taking that moment no matter what's happening, it was just really inspiring. So, and I think that's what I inspire to be. And right now the tool for me is to help me be that is CBD, and it's not a tool that I think that we should all be, oh my god, we should all be on CBD and this is the only way out of it. No, like we should all be mindful and calm and peaceful and, meditate and sleep well and eat healthy and move our body and do all of those things. It's just one of the pieces to the puzzle if you even need it.
I love it. Thank you. And thanks for those kind words. Yeah, thank you.
It was just very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sometimes it feels like I'm a hot mama mess, but I try and enjoy those moments because like I said, like none of it matters if I'm not enjoying it, right? It doesn't matter how many kids I have or how cute my kid is or how many words she can say. She's really cute. I'm going to just say she's really cute.
She looks like an angel.
Oh, thank you.
She needs like a little wings and then she can be like on a picture of an angel.
Oh, thank you. She's a sweetie. But yeah, none of it matters if I don't feel good, right? And like this morning, when I was really anxious and crying, like that none of that, I'm not there for her. I'm not there with her in that moment. So that for me is really what keeps me going and reminds me to take care of me first because I can't look after her. I can't be there for her. And I can't enjoy her angelness if I'm not present. So, thanks for that. That was really sweet. Okay, so I got more questions about CBD, and I know you guys do too. So we're gonna keep going here. Some rapid fire questions. Can I drive?
With CBD, don't drive the first time you're taking it, just because if you take too much, you can get a little sleepy, a little like too relaxed. The easy way to combat that, you can just have a coffee and then it's gonna all go away. Not go away, but like it's not gonna be there. But just like the first time, don't drive. But after that, you'll see that you can drive totally.
For how long?
But just for like an hour. Like see how it makes you feel first for the first time, and then if you were like, oh okay, I see how it makes me feel, and then you can totally drive. Yeah. Okay. It's THC that you can't drive with.
Like legally. If I get, this is so naive, if I get stopped at a check stop,
you're totally fine.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Does it have a flavor? What does it taste like, CBD oil?
There's two flavors that I personally work with. So CBD itself doesn't taste like much, so that's why even if it's diluted in MCT coconut oil, so MCT coconut oil is coconut oil with no flavor, basically. It tastes like nothing. A lot of companies do that. If it's very concentrated formula, because CBD itself is technically a little bit bitter. If like in my most concentrated formula, it's a little bit bitter, but again, it's just a little bit. And the other flavor, technically the only flavor, is hemp flavor. So hemp seed oil tastes like nutty, earthy flavor. So if you're like into green smoothies and things like that, you're gonna be into it. If you're not into them, you're not gonna be into it. It's a very specific kind of like flavor profile. I find I prefer personally the flavored one just because it works. There's like a placebo effect that the first minute, it's like drinking coffee, even though coffee doesn't work for 15 minutes. As soon as we like sip that as soon as we smell it, we're already more awake. So I feel like with the hemp flavor, it does the same thing for me. I'm like, as soon as I taste it, I'm like, I must be calmer already, and then it kicks in and I'm like actually calmer.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so there's options with flavors. Okay, good to know. So how do I choose a good CBD oil? Because there's obviously, it sounds like, I don't know, I'm new to this, there's a lot on the market. It's hard to know where, how do you know? And like you said, I know we're new in this whole thing.
Yeah, so I would first of all go with making sure that there is no THC in it. There is some health benefits to THC, but if you're absolutely new to this, I would just go with 0.0% THC. There's some sort of, again, lab tests that are attached to, make sure you Google the lab, that it's a real lab, that it's not like fake lab, that they're like just uploading. Make sure that there is Google reviews of real people. Make sure that there is like some sort of social proof that it's an actual product that actually exists. Concentration wise and price wise and taste wise, that's going to be your decision. So when it comes to pricing, so CBD itself is quite expensive. So what you're paying for is 4 milligrams of CBD. So if, for example, a bottle that can be the same size of bottles has 500 milligrams or 1500 milligrams, obviously the one that has 1500 milligrams of CBD is going to be more expensive. Usually the more concentrated they are, economy of scale makes it cheaper. But again, if you're just trying it for the first time, you don't need to go for the most concentrated one. You just want to start somewhere, right?
So you could start with like the 1500 milligrams or
1500 milligrams. Honestly, it's already like a good dosage. If you're committed to, like, let's say trying it for a couple of months, then like that's a great place. That's a great bottle to start with. I have smaller bottles that only have 500 milligrams, but again, I try to keep them concentrated, so it's going to be in a smaller bottle versus like in a larger bottle, less concentrated, just because people don't want to take a lot of it. Like a lot of times there's this like idea that I have to only take a couple of drops, like only like, let's say 10 drops. People don't want to take like a whole dropper for the first time. So that's why I like when they're concentrated. I just find it psychologically works better.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And that was one of my questions. I was like, oh, I remember the first time I looked it up, I was shocked at how expensive it was.
Yeah, it is expensive. So it is, the good thing is that it lasts for a while. So a bottle, like a regular kind of 30 milliliters, 1500 milligrams, there's 1,200 drops. So if you're taking 10 drops a day, that's 120 days.
That's 4 months. 4 months.
Yeah. So it lasts for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
And and the small bottle, even though it looks so tiny, if you take, there's 400 drops, which means it will last you for 40 days if you're taking 10 drops a day.
Wow. Okay.
So it lasts. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. That's so interesting to know. That's great. Yeah. Because that was one of my things. Well, and I know some of you guys have asked that question too. They're like, oh, why is it expensive? But that's good to know too that it lasts. And I think, I mean, I know about this in my business, and you probably do too in the health world. Like that, it just, if we want to be healthy, we have to think about it as an investment too, right? And think about like, what do we want to put into our bodies? What kind of books do we want to be reading? What kind of people do we want to be surrounding ourselves with? All those questions, right? And totally. So we have to think about it too, I think, as an investment. And yeah, and now, knowing that too, I think about the comparison that I spend on collagen or on protein powders
or massages.
Massages.
Give me relax.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I also find with CBD, it's the prices should come down eventually. The more widely ranged it will become, the more we use it, the more the prices are going to come down, hopefully. And again, I'm a small company, so I don't, I don't have much overhead, so I try to keep my prices as low as I can and make it as available as possible for as many people as I can.
Amazing. Thank you. That's so cool. So here's a bit of an interesting kind of twist here is, do you think that stress or anxiety is a normal part of life? And do we really need to be reducing it? Is it something that we should just try and deal with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I find it's how much stress you have, right? So it's that kind of like a curve. We go up, and stress can be really productive in the sense that, we can... we have what we call stress, quote unquote, is a hormone, cortisol a lot of times, or adrenaline, but cortisol is like kind of our main hormone that is a stressor. So cortisol is the one that produces energy, keeps us alert, keeps us awake. So it basically what this makes us function throughout the day. So cortisol is very important, and we love it and we want it. However, there becomes a point where it becomes too high, and when it becomes too high, then that's when it becomes damaging to our body, because it starts starting causing imbalances in our other systems, whether it's hormonal imbalances, whether it's we start like muscle wasting, or we start collagen wasting, like our adrenals are going override. So like there's all these terrible side effects, but it's not because of cortisol, it's because of too much cortisol. How much of cortisol that is for each person, it's going to be very different, right? I swear I know people that are on a high stress kind of like level most of their days, and they just function so well on that. And may I mention, those are usually males, and I don't know why, but they're just like thrive on it, and I feel like they become healthier because of it. Versus I know also way more people that have this like threshold. As soon as they become a little more stressful, you can just feel like it's detrimental. It lowers their immune system, it screws up with their sleep, it screws up with their hormones. Like if I get too stressed, I can notice PMS like that. Like I know that I'm gonna have PMS, and I usually don't. That's how I know I have too much stress in life. Just things like that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've heard one of my friends, Laura Sherrill, she does cycle syncing, so we'll have to bring her on for an episode too. She always says your period is like is a barometer for your health for the rest of the month.
Totally.
So if you've had a stressful month, if you haven't been taking care of yourself, it's going to show up in your period. So yeah, it's one of the things that I learned from her.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm such a fan of like the whole period thing. I feel like, okay, just a side note. I feel like because we live in a men's world, a lot of times, and I know it's changing, but it's still the reality. Most of the studies are done by men on men. Yeah. So I feel like it's so widely understudied. And I find like our periods are just the most amazing, magical things that if we just watch them and love them, they can bring so much more clarity about how our bodies work.
Oh, so cool. I totally agree. And okay, so Laura, if you're listening, we got to bring you on.
Yeah, Laura, yeah. We got to bring you on.
Yeah, because I totally agree. And yeah, I want to redefine that too. That's magic. Thank you for sharing that. So, one of the questions too, and I think we've kind of answered it, maybe we can kind of sum it up, but one of them is around like, if we just take CBD, if I just take it, am I just avoiding things, or am I like not dealing with things? And what I think you're going to say, and maybe I'm wrong, but is that like it's one tool, and that CBD isn't that we take it and then we neglect everything else, but it's one tool, and so is good sleep hygiene, and so is nutrition, and so is working out, and so is, enjoying the moments and kissing our babies. And
you're spot on.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also it's just it's a tool to be where we want to be. Like it's a kind of like a tool for I don't want to say for goal setting, but sort of, because a lot of times if our goal is to be healthier, happier, more at peace, more at ease, more present, then it's a tool to help us get there. And the way I like to think about it is almost like rewiring my brain. I personally grew up in a very stressed kind of environment and the more I look into it and the more I look into childhood development, I realize that it becomes almost like a pattern in my brain to react to everything and to get stressed out about everything, because that's my comfort zone. It's almost like an addiction to, there's actual addiction to cortisol, but so when we try to, the longer we stay calm, the more we retrain our brain to stay calm. So nowadays I find like, even if I don't take CBD, just the idea that I'm like, Nadya, don't you want to be calm? And right away I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be calm. Oh, I'll be calm. Okay, I'm calm. Like it's almost like it just retrains my brain to be calmer.
Wow. Yeah, it's habits, right? New habits, new ways of thinking. And I always like I think goals are not about, they're not about what you achieve, it's about who you become in the process.
Oh my God,
and
totally.
to achieve any kind of a goal, you need to change your mindset and your habits, because you are the combination of those two things. So yes, I love that. So this is just one more tool to help with that mindset and a habit to help you be more mindful, be more present, drop down the stress levels, and find a new way of being in the world.
100%. And if you're using it like with that intention, then you're just gonna get to that place sooner. But if you're using it just, mindlessly, it's kind of like what are the tools and what are we using them for?
Love it. So good. Okay, a couple more rapid fire questions here for you. Will this be detected by drug sniffing dogs? This question came up for the people that work on sites or in workplaces and where there might be drug sniffing dogs. Again, we said no airports, don't take it to the airport, but what about workplaces?
I actually would confirm maybe with your workplace about CBD itself. Just because I feel like there shouldn't be a problem. However, I also don't want to get anybody in trouble. What if there's a little bit of a residue on the bottle from itself, the product itself? They shouldn't be able to detect it because there's no more cannabis left. However, you never know. So I don't want to say.
No, that's good. It's good.
Yeah,
okay, check with your HR department, my friends. Check with HR and make sure. Okay, so what about drug testing? Like, what if we're drug tested for pot or other drugs? Is this going to show up in a drug test?
So CBD is absolutely different, so it shouldn't show up on a drug test. However, there has been like little tiny minuscule research about the fact that CBD can convert in a little bit of THC in your system. I mean, there's always a chance, so it's kind of like it's the risk that you're taking. It's a really minor risk. It's a very low risk, but it depends on like how serious your job is and how serious are the consequences. So I think you just need to weigh those things in because, I won't be able to like 100% guarantee anything. Even though there's 0.0% THC, there has been one study done that to show that a little bit of CBD converts into a little bit of THC in your stomach with a stomach acid. But again, that is just some minuscule research that hasn't been proven since. But I also don't want to be like, oh, it's not true.
Yeah, take it all day at work. Yeah. Okay, so do you know how long does it stay in your body for?
It's supposed to leave your system within like 8 to 12 hours.
Okay, so for example, if I, took CBD on like a Friday evening or a Saturday morning, it should be out of my system by a Monday morning.
It's supposed to, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, all right, that's super interesting to know. So what about, I've heard a couple people asked about pure CBD versus hemp-derived CBD.
Yeah.
What is the difference and what is better?
So there's all these words with CBD, CBD isolate, pure, hemp-derived, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah. It's all the same thing, technically speaking. I don't, like, there's no definition of any of them. So CBD technically is always derived from hemp. So there's two types of, so cannabis is a type of plant, and then there's two types of cannabis. So like we can have apple, we can have gala or Macintosh, right? So there are two different types of apples. However, they're both apples. So hemp and marijuana are both cannabis. So
Okay,
hemp and
all right.
marijuana are both cannabis.
Okay.
So marijuana is high in THC, high in psychoactive compound, and low in CBD. Hemp is high in CBD and low in THC. So most of CBD is extracted from hemp, just because hemp is high in CBD. So why extract something from a plant that's low in it? So usually most of CBD is hemp derived. That's first. Pure, I'm not really sure what they mean by pure, just because like I know that it's a marketing word. It's whatever that marketing word means. It's kind of like natural or
Okay,
like,
yeah.
so
That's
there's no
exactly what I
actual meaning of it. And then and isolate just means, so my CBD is made with isolate, which means it's literally just a CBD. There's nothing else in it. So it's kind of like it's one chemical compound.
So are there other CBD oils on the market then that would have more than just CBD?
Yeah, so there's full spectrum ones. So full spectrum ones will have other cannabinoids, including a little bit of THC. The reason why I don't work with full spectrum at this point of time, just because I don't want to work with any THC. There are health benefits of full spectrum as well. So if you're like, I'm not afraid of THC, I'm okay with full spectrum, you can find some other health benefits in that as well.
Okay, all right. So maybe that's what they meant is it just CBD isolate or is it full spectrum?
Yeah, there
Maybe
are
that's what
a
the
lot of
question
companies
was.
that use those words,
Yeah.
pure CBD,
Okay.
as like to describe their product. But again, different companies will use that in a different ways. It's kind of like the word natural or holistic, or like there's like a lot of words out there that like brands use.
Yeah.
And you're like, what exactly does that mean? So yeah, so it's just one of those words. So I'm glad that a question came up, is because I like wanted to just words a lot of times don't mean, and like it's just marketing.
Yeah, got it. Okay, super interesting. Okay, now I have a couple of personal questions that came up here. So one of them was specific to cancer. So my father has multiple myeloma, so they've been kind of heard that CBD might be helpful for him, but really nervous to take it and doesn't want to do it. So any insights on that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm sorry to hear about your dad.
Thank you.
So when it comes to really severe conditions like cancer or epilepsy, I think that it will really depend on the person. There's so many different types of cancers. They have so many different reasons for them. CBD can be one of those like helpful hands, because CBD, if even if it doesn't necessarily like cure cancer and all of that, it can help through the process of a healing, because it can help you feel more calm. It can help you feel more at ease. It also can help with like nausea that people usually experience during treatment, or with pains. It can just overall make a person feel better. So I'm very wary about claiming things like that CBD can help with severe conditions like cancer.
Got it.
But it can help support it. How about that?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. It's so great. Thank you. What about CBD with other medications?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So CBD does interact with certain medication the same way as grapefruit juice does. So there's an enzyme in our liver that processes CBD, and it processes grapefruit juice, and it processes some of pharmaceutical drugs. If you know that you can't drink grapefruit juice with your medication, that means CBD will also affect that medication. Sometimes it can, so CBD makes the medication stronger a lot of times. In certain cases, that can be, if you take the CBD regularly, that can be a good thing, because that means you can take less of your medication. You just must consult your doctor. When I say that, it's actually really difficult to consult your doctor because your doctor is not going to know, most likely. There's only a few doctors that are educated on that. However, if it's like something like a blood thinners and CBD makes it stronger, that's kind of life-threatening. So you definitely want to ask your doctor. You definitely want to confirm with your doctor, talk to your doctor, and because that is something, there might be interactions. Yes.
Yeah, so good. Okay. I think this is fascinating. Right before we hopped on, we actually looked up Adderall, and you're like, Google does grapefruit juice interact with Adderall? And I was like, what? That is so random, but that's fascinating about how CBD works and that interaction. So.
Totally. Yeah. So if you want to know, just be like, does grapefruit juice interact with your drug that you're taking? And that way you will know. Because sometimes it's like a clear answer, just because there's a lot of information on grapefruit juice. There's not much information on CBD, obviously.
So cool. Okay. That's helpful for everybody. So maybe this is where we end off here is for the woman, speak to the woman who, she's like, I don't fit into the whole pot scene or cannabis, or I'm uncomfortable. What do you wish that she knew?
I would like to say that we all often grow up in or live in a very limited perceptions of things because of the way we've been taught, the books we've read, the things we've seen, and we have those limitations in our mind, and we have associations like, if you do this, then you'll do that. However, I think one of the things about living the fullest life is about, and a more open and joyful life is about questioning those beliefs. As an immigrant, and I'm sure you'll have immigrant listeners, they will be able to relate. When you immigrate to a different country, you have to question everything, because you're all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, all of the beliefs that I had are basically questioned right now. So this was just one of those beliefs that I didn't want to question, honestly, because it didn't make me feel comfortable. And this is just one of those beliefs that I hope I inspire other people to question. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. There's nothing bad that can happen, knock on wood, but there's no real side effects other than the interaction with certain drugs. There's no there hasn't been found, there's no overdoses of cannabis or especially CBD. There's no upper tolerance limit that they found with CBD, so you can drink the whole bottle, and they haven't found any side effects of that. There isn't much to lose, but there's so much to gain. Again, it doesn't have to be an all full out tomorrow I'm buying my bottle, blah blah blah. It can just be I'm gonna open a conversation with my girlfriends and see who tried it and see who uses it and see what are the beliefs are. I'm gonna Google it and see what Google says, right? It's a step-by-step process, guys. It took me honestly a good year to try. So I don't want to put any expectation of people being like, oh, they listen to this podcast, that's it, I must try it tomorrow. No, you do you do it at your own pace. You do it at your own, I'm very cautious about things that I take, so I hope you are too. And so research it, do your own research.
I love that. So good. Shift your mindset, do your research, do what feels comfortable for you. That's why I just love that you came here to share all of your wisdom, and I want to say thank you so much. So where can people find you and your products? Tell us about ICARIA.
Yeah, so I'm only on Instagram and email. So we have a website, ICARIA.co, so ICARIA.co, and it's the same Instagram handle at ICARIA.co. I am the one answering emails, I'm the one answering Instagram messages, so don't be afraid to reach out. I'm happy to jump on a call with you, just because it's funny, the more I grow and the more customers I have, the less people reach out to me personally. I wonder if I'm like becoming less.
You're such
I
a
don't
big
know.
deal.
No, but I really am not. Like, I'm not. People aren't calling me very often. At the beginning, so many people called me, and now nobody does anymore. And I'm not telling you like, oh, call me, but at the same time, I'm like, I love talking about this. So if you want support, if you want like, I'm happy to be there through the process. So yeah, reach out to me.
Thank you. And I will link to all of that in the show notes too, and so people can find you. But definitely go have a follow. And one of the things I really respect about Nadya, which I'm sure you can hear, is that she's so focused on education. So give her a follow, check it out, and just learn more. And if it's something that you're open to, which, I mean, if you're still listening at this point, I feel like you're probably pretty open, which is amazing. And thank you. Learn about it, and maybe there's a friend or a family member or someone else in your life that you can also share this with, because I've heard what it's done for you in your life, and I know I've heard about what it's done for my friends too, and I'm starting to experience it in my life too. So yeah, definitely go give her a follow. Nadya, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom. Thank you for being so open, even on these like dicey, weird questions. And even
thank you for asking me all those questions. I appreciate when there is questions that people are thinking and you're asking me those questions, because I know that the audience is thinking those questions. And that, thank you for having me, being open-minded, and being open-minded to this like new, still weird product that people are like, and just showing you to the audience, because I guarantee you there's going to be people coming out of after this podcast. It might be 6 months from now. They're going to be like, I've heard about you on this podcast and it's been life-changing. And honestly, I do what I do for these emails, because I get those emails, and when I get those emails, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna continue.
Oh my gosh. Okay, when you get that, forward it to me.
I will forward it to you.
I love it. Okay.
You might get it to
yeah, and vice versa. Yes, like that's what we're here to do. Thank you. And I just can't wait to stay in touch, and can't wait to change lives together. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I know it seriously opened up my eyes to a whole new world I knew nothing about, and my intention with it was to help you do the same. I gotta tell you, I just had Sonoma wake up crying, and so she's sitting on my lap right now in true work-from-home mama style, so you may hear her make a little cameo in the next minute or two. Now, before I end off, I want to say to please go give Nadya and ICARIA some love. Go check them out. Everything is linked in the show notes. I know you will love them as much as I do. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming with an open heart and an open mind. If you have anyone in your life who you think would enjoy this episode, a friend, a colleague, family, please take a moment and share it with them. And while you're spreading love, make sure you... I'm getting a duck shoved in my face. Hi, ducky. Hello. If you enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot and tag me in it. If you're listening with your kids or wherever you are, I would love to see that too. I love knowing that you guys are listening and seeing where you're listening from. Maybe hold the shower photos for yourself. I gotta tell you that it is an honor to keep creating these episodes. And if you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave us a review. I am a one-woman podcast show. Well, I guess with Sonoma it makes two, and a ducky. So we are just still a relatively small and new podcast, and every single review makes a world of a difference. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being you, and I will see you next week for another episode of Goalden Girls Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If something spoke to you, send me a message by sharing this episode and tagging me on social media. If you know someone who would love to hear this episode, please share it with them too. Because I love surprises, make sure you subscribe to the Goalden Girls podcast today. It's the only way to find out about bonus surprise episodes and make sure you don't miss a single beat on your golden journey. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you in the next episode of the Goalden Girls podcast.